I'm Alicia Fletcher.
And I'm Paul Moore.
This is this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Friday, December 19, 2008. Here's what's happening, Paul.
Thanks, Alicia. President Barry Jagdeo says the effects of the global financial crisis will not affect government's social programs. The president made this comment today as he addressed members of the Guyana Defense Force at a special luncheon and noted that his administration is committed to see development in Guyana. Edward Lane reports.
Finds small developing countries like Guyana could be hardest hit by the consequences. While the government is putting mechanisms in place to isolate Guyana from the credit crunch, this country is not immune from the effects, and President Barry Jagdeo says already overseas exports are being affected.
We export rice, sugar, coffee, gold, seafood, forestry products, and we make our money. So if the global demand for these commodities shrinks, then prices are going to fall, and it's going to affect production here.
The Guyanese leader says that this has caused the Amelia Fall hydropower project to be pushed back and may have some impact on the Bauxite Minerals $1 billion aluminium plant.
We are starting to see the impact of the global crisis. No one really unaffected by this crisis.
However, the president says despite these constraints, government remains committed to the social development and will move ahead with its social projects. He noted that Guyana will not delay any of its projects, pointing to the Berbice River Bridge, the several diagnostic centers, and a soon-to-be opened ophthalmology center at Port Morant.
Unfortunately, this is going to be a side of this independent problem that we have, the global slowdown, that we will maintain our social program because it is necessary to improve the lives of our people.
However, remittances were affected by the crisis. The Guyanese leader had previously met with bankers and insurance companies here to discuss the effects of the crisis in Guyana and had concluded that these sectors are safe. The administration also met with economists and has since created a firewall against the direct effects of the crisis. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
President Barry Jagdeo says government is considering a series of long-term investments to enhance the drainage capacity countrywide. The head of state says attempts are being made to get assistance due to the significant expenditure required. More in this report.
The intense rainfall patterns and flooding being experienced by Guyana and other countries are regarded by experts as direct effects of climate change. Over the course of the year, government has injected some $1.7 billion to carry out drainage and irrigation works across the country. And President Barry Jagdeo says several long-term investments are also being assessed, which could enable Guyana to better cope with the challenges that climate change presents. These include strengthening sea defenses, adding more pumps and sluices, raising the embankment and conservancy dams, dredging outfall channels, and facilitating another channel from the East Demerara Conservancy to the Atlantic.
We just built a pontoon, by the way, and we have deployed that pontoon now because we are paying contractors in the past to do some of the dredging. And in a matter of days, they managed to do like Greenfield, which is a major sluice which takes the water out from a large catchment area was completed. So these are some of the long-term measures.
However, the Guyanese leader says Guyana will need assistance to adapt to some of these measures and has pointed to Japan as a key player in this regard.
When I went to Japan and I signed an agreement with Prime Minister Abe at that time, I met with the Japanese officials in Bosnia and I brought to their attention that we had already submitted this project. One project alone is over $40 million US, and we promised the head of the delegation, they promised to follow up on it when they get back.
While the UN recently implemented an adaptation fund in Poznan to assist vulnerable countries like Guyana, President Jagdeo has questioned its capacity to effectively tackle existing challenges.
That was very contentious in Europe at Poznan about they wanted to assign 2% of the carbon trading, the European trading scheme and other similar schemes, the carbon market generally, for adaptation purposes, especially in developing countries. But it's just too small to tackle the magnitude of the problem that countries like ours would face.
The Guyanese leader says he is satisfied with the D&I works carried out this year, noting that government also managed to cut costs by using its own resources. He has also disclosed that there may be funds left over from this year's budget, which could be utilized to implement further flood prevention projects. Reporting for the 6 o'clock news, I'm Shardalal.
President Barry Jagdeo says efforts are ongoing to reduce water levels in the drainage canals and storage basins in preparation for the predicted heavy rains. During an inspection of the Liliendal pumps, he stated that the situation has been manageable due to additional drainage and irrigation works which were instructed by government. However, the President has expressed concern about the drainage situation in South Georgetown and says efforts will have to be made to resolve the matter. He says central government will also be taking over the rehabilitation of the Liliendal and Kitty pumps from City Hall. He believes that the pumps have not been operating at their full capacity due to age and neglect by various officials and estimates that over $200 million will have to be spent to bring them up to standard. Should the current situation worsen, the head of state says, government will be ready to implement an emergency